I'm fairly certain every time I do a controller review, I start off by saying how we live in a time, we live in a society where we have so many options for controllers. There's something out there for everyone. And yeah, so pretend I said that. I'm your cool Uncle Marissa, and I am back with another controller review. This time it's a controller battle. Kind of. Something that's been popping up a bit more frequently has been teeny tiny controllers, like novelty size controllers. 8BitDo has a lot of them. Is it 8BitDo or 8BitDo? Come on, because like I was thinking the other day, I'm like 8BitDo is what I would call it, but what does do mean? And I was like, well, do is a word, but 8BitDo, that's not a complete phrase. So I'm just gonna say 8BitDo because that's what I've always said. Anyway, 8BitDo has a lot of tiny ones. I've actually seen them used in very creative ways as well, with people using them kind of like a macro pad with their computer, with, for example, photo editing software or drawing software, etc. But that's beside the point. I think CRKD, I think they go by Cracked maybe. They also have these really mini controllers that are very cute, but they're all kind of like pocketable, put it on your keychain. Something that I hadn't really seen, to be honest, is controllers that are marketed as being small in terms of being smaller than regular controllers, as opposed to being miniature. But recently there were two that caught my eye. Now, I always like to preface these videos by just mentioning what controllers I like in terms of setting that base level. For me, the PlayStation controllers have always been the most comfortable. The PlayStation 2 controllers, the PS4 controller was my go-to PC controller for a long time, and I have yet to lay hands upon a PS5 controller, but it looks a bit meatier. The Switch Pro controller is fine for me. It's a little on the bigger side if I wanted to think very hard about it, but it doesn't cross my mind when I'm actually using it. And in terms of Xbox controllers, those have always kind of been my least favorite controllers. They've always felt a bit on the bigger side. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. I have long fingers, but slender hands. So I can reach things, but my palms are not wide. I hope that's helpful. So the first smaller controller that I came across was the PowerA Nano enhanced controller. I think the enhanced part is just that it's wireless. I had seen these controllers before. It had never really struck me one way or another. PowerA they have cute graphics, but nothing has ever really grabbed me and pulled me in enough to accept the concessions that are made with their controllers, the kneecapping that is done with their controllers, and bite the bullet. But someone actually, I think, shared this to my Discord and was like, these are literally your colors. And I saw it and I was like, oh my God, these are literally my colors. It's spring, and so it's very Easter pastel. The only question I have is what was going through their heads with this silver D-pad? Literally, why? This does not complement anything. Like, you could have just been boring and made it white. I don't understand. And in case you're wondering, regular Switch Pro controller buttons are not compatible. I tried, but I even thought like maybe trimming one. It doesn't work, it doesn't fit. So you're stuck with this gaudy thing. Now, this is a official third-party Nintendo Switch controller. And the reason I'm emphasizing official third-party is, as I suggested earlier, they do get kneecapped when they're official. So there are features that you are missing. The one that Nintendo is the most intense about not including is rumble for some reason. They're like that. Now that is what gives our OEM controllers the edge. Is rumble, but I can do without rumble. I use the Hori SplitPad Pro in handheld mode, and they also do not have rumble for the same reason. I was like, let's give this a go. Some weeks later, I got an email from 8BitDo. Now I'm saying 8BitDo, and they had the 8BitDo ultimate mini controller. I also think it's funny that the PowerA one is called Nano because 8BitDo does have a Nano, but it's one of their actually like teeny tiny ones. But yeah, this is a mini, and this one is officially licensed by Xbox. I mean, you can see it's got the X, right? And I'm not a fan of Xbox controllers. Again, I haven't used recent ones, recent iterations of it. I could tell you which version I did try back then, but I literally don't understand their naming conventions. And that is just the regular black one that's similar shaped, I think, but it kind of splays out a little. So how is this guy kneecapped? This is kneecapped in that it is wired. I think that that is actually maybe a bit more debilitating in my opinion. Perhaps that's what I thought upon seeing it, than not having rumble, but we'll see. But look at this thing, it's gorgeous. They actually have, I think, 3 different versions, and this one literally is my color, and there are no questionable design choices here. This is like white frosted translucent, I'm pretty sure, and it looks slightly pink because the back is pink. Like, I kind of want to try shelling a Game Boy of some kind in this style, because that's just, it's so So something you might have noticed by now is, why are you doing like a shootout between a Nintendo Switch controller and an Xbox controller? And it's because they're both small. So the way that we're gonna keep this on even ground is they both work perfectly well with PC gaming. So we're gonna do a PC gaming comparison. I'm not actually gonna game in the video, but like that's their battlefield. That is the even equal battlefield that they can have. Of course, you can get an adapter to use this with Switch if you really wanted to. Anyway, my big question always when watching reviews is how much. So before we get into the details, $60 US MSRP, $35 US MSRP, and 8BitDo famously goes on sale a lot, something to consider. It came with a coupon for a free Game Pass membership that doesn't expire forever. So someone let me know when there's good games on a certain month so that I can use it then. But I feel like that's worth noting as well. Let's go ahead to the table and get hands-on and compare the two, and also just talk about them separately and their merits and their shortcomings. So I'm just gonna start with a Pro controller just so that we can use it as our baseline for size. And I would like to think most all of you are familiar with the Switch Pro controller. And then here are our little guys. The Mini, it really is quite just a Mini. It is slightly smaller than the Pro controller to give just a little bit more of a well-rounded hold. In holding them, the difference is honestly incredibly subtle. It feels smaller, I mean, because it is, but it doesn't feel tiny. I think this is kind of what I was imagining in the realm of a mini or smaller controller, because it's like, okay, so it's slightly more portable, and it's a bit more comfortable for hands that are either more slender or that are smaller. I think it can work with either. And I'm someone who does find the Pro controller comfortable. In direct comparison, the handles for the Pro controller feel really beefy after holding this. So in terms of comfort, this is definitely an ace. And then we have the PowerA Nano. The PowerA Nano really is much smaller. While I don't feel like I'm holding a novelty controller, it does kind of feel a bit like, oh, like this feels a bit like a kid's size controller, you know, like you have the motor function and skills to play games, but your hands quite haven't gotten fully developed yet. It's a bit like sitting in a child's chair, where for me, I'm like, yeah, this is fine, it's comfortable, but it's it's a little noticeable that this wasn't necessarily made for me. And I think that's mostly noticeable on the trigger buttons. So with the Pro controller, each finger is kind of on the triggers and it's kind of resting like this. With the 8BitDo, it's very similar. And actually with this, the triggers feel a little higher as well, which helps with them not feeling too small. But with this, with the trigger buttons, my fingers are like, hello, nice to see you. Ah, yes, we don't really get to talk much anymore, do we? So definitely it's on the smaller side. I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable necessarily, especially if you are using, or at least I am using, just the left joystick and the face buttons, or even the D-pad and the face buttons. But if you are using these, I don't know, there's something like particularly cramped about just using these two. So size aside, let's actually get into the details of each of these controllers. And so we can put this fellow away for now. I'm going to start with the PowerA one because it's the first one that I got. And it's adorable, just from first glance, it's adorable. The colors are just such a lovely pastel. It's got this, it's called Spring, which makes sense because it feels very Eastery. The soft edges are very, very cute, very wholesome. And that is very professional design language actually. And we have the little mappable buttons on the back and the lights right here. It keeps trying to connect, poor thing. How do the buttons and everything feel? So the joysticks are standard, Switch joysticks. They feel the same as anything that uses them, but the buttons are where this really kind of starts to fall apart. So if you guys hear that, the buttons are a bit on the louder side, but I'm not here to be bothered by the sound. That's not the type of clicking or clacking that bothers me. It's not that. But you might hear that they take a lot of force to press down. It's not a light touch. I have to put kind of more force into it than I typically would, and it feels rather unnatural. And that's quite a shame, and also a little odd, because if you are marketing this to quote unquote little hands, i.e. children, wouldn't children have less strength in their fingers? And in terms of the D-pad, we have the same thing. It's not as noticeable if you have your finger on the center, but as soon as it lifts up and you want to go back down, it takes a lot of force. Same with these little guys, but it's not as noticeable just because you don't use them as often. So overall, these face buttons and the D-pad, they feel very, very cheap. Going on to the trigger buttons, they feel pretty much the same, but less clicky, I guess, but they take a lot of force to hit the bumpers. And with the triggers, they are a little alarming because there's a very sudden tactile bump to them. They're not analog triggers. You just have kind of on and off, so to speak, but the bump is quite alarming. And I gave this a chance in spite of this incredibly tacky D-pad, because the rest of it is so cute. And even if it's a little small for me for comfort, I was like, it feels fine enough to play with, especially more casual gaming if I'm not playing something that is a platformer or a Metroidvania or anything that requires more precise inputs. This should be fine, but then feeling how cheap the buttons are is quite a shame. And the fact that this is $50 to $60. The fact that this is $50 to $60 is frankly embarrassing on PowerA's part. I'd heard poor things about PowerA and the quality of their stuff, but they are a Nintendo licensed third-party company. So I figured, how bad could they be? And the thing is, I would forgive this if it was $20, but it's not $20. It's $50 to $60, which, why would you even get this if you had $50 to $60? Why not just get the Pro controller? It is such a waste of money. And I do know that there are different prices for their different designs. I've seen much cheaper ones, maybe about $30 for the Nanos on the Bezos site, but this is still $50 to $60, this design, along with several other designs. And I just don't understand the thought process there, especially as kneecapped as it is. I still think that of the officially licensed partners, Hori is still stands strong and is still my favorite because they make stuff that's cute, that is quality, and yeah, this is just embarrassing. So let's move on to the 8BitDo. 8BitDo, 8BitDo, do 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 do. I saw this and I was like, oh my god, this kind of same vibes as the other one, where I was like, this is made for me except for that one thing. That one thing in this case, of course, being the Xbox logo and button, because it is partnered with Xbox. And I have never had a box of X, ever. I have never been interested in it. And I've always actually found their controllers to be incredibly ugly and mediocre when it comes to comfort of the three big ones, Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox. When it came to PC gaming before the existence of 8BitDo, my preference had always been for the PS4 controller. But honestly, this looks more like a Pro controller that's been shrunk down a little bit than an Xbox controller. And if you didn't have the X, you could have fooled me, especially since these buttons are the same color as the clear front, so they blend in, and so from far away you could be like, oh, this is a Switch controller. Anyway, this is absolutely gorgeous. It has this translucent build that I think we've all been begging for, of bring back the translucent tech thing, but what's super cool about it is they've used colors that are my colors, but also I think aren't very much what we saw in the era of translucent electronics, because they tended to be very vibrant primary colors. Sometimes, you know, you could have things like pink and stuff, but they were super neon and super vibrant. Whereas this is very pastel, and there's a very milky and jelly-like quality to it. I'm absolutely obsessed. As I said, ergonomically, this is so absolutely perfect. It gives me the kind of hand feel of a Sony controller. So I'm talking about PS4 and prior, where they fit in your hands really well if you have slender fingers or small hands, and everything's within reach, everything's cozy, your fingers aren't kissing. So this one feels very much that it was aimed more towards people with smaller hands or slender hands, people who want a slightly smaller controller as opposed to children. These sticks are the same as anything else. There's nothing special about them. They are Hall effect, but in terms of hand feel, there's nothing special about them. The face buttons don't feel as soft to press as a Pro controller. Like, Pro controller face buttons kind of go down without a lot of effort. This one requires a bit more effort. But in comparison to the PowerA, it doesn't bounce back so immediately. So they're fine. Nothing remarkable. A little maybe clackier than I would like if I'd designed it, but honestly, I didn't really think one way or another about them. The bubbles are kind of cute. I know that's like an Xbox thing, but they made it cute. if I look too long at the lettering, the legends are a bit ugly. So I'm just not going to do that. The D-pad on this is very, it's very much like bubble wrap, like popping bubble wrap in a good way. It kind of makes me think of OEM Game Boy Advance SP tactile switches, but even more bubbly. Of course, we don't have these switches with the Pro controller. These are membranes. And with this is also membranes, but somehow the stiffest membranes in the entire world. These, I'm pretty sure there are switches, and they feel really good. The other buttons are soft and quiet. These are micro switches, and the switches they're relatively quiet for what they are, and these two are membranes. So these are all fine. In terms of the trigger bumpers, the bumpers are really soft to press. They're clicky, of course. I like that they're kind of chunky, so it's easy to rest your fingers on them if you don't want to rest them lower, and it's easy to transition. And they have wonderful, wonderful analog triggers. I always like the 8BitDo analog triggers very much. There's no bells and whistles on this in terms of extra buttons or anything of the sort. And I think that's fine because honestly, I very rarely, if at all, use mappable buttons. And yeah, I love this. This is a joy to play with, and it actually makes me want to play more PC games or more games on my PC. I was quite nervous actually about the fact that it's wired because yeah, wires are a thing of the past, right? But the wire that comes with it is extremely long, and it is more than enough for me sitting at my computer. Like, I'm sitting at my computer and there's just tons of slack on this wire. And yeah, so that's awesome. For couch playing, it might make a difference for you. But for playing on my PC, it is all good. And yeah, I always love these 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks so that you can listen to the sick beats. And this being $35, and it came with like a few months of free Xbox Game Pass, is absolutely insane when you compare it to this at $50 to $60. This is offensive pricing. This is great pricing. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I think I said most everything that I wanted to, and I've shared all of the strengths and weaknesses that I wanted to. So the in summation, in conclusion, would be that the 8BitDo controller absolutely obliterates the PowerA. I had heard not great things about PowerA. I hadn't heard anyone like, absolutely going after them and being like everything they make is terrible. But I'd heard like middling stuff about them, and it all is true, and it is absolutely not worth $60. It's kind of mind-blowing that it's $60. I don't know if it'll reduce in price eventually, or I will probably definitely be selling this. I think it could be fun for a kid who doesn't care that much, and especially like, when kids are at that age where they press buttons very aggressively, I think this could work well and have a satisfying tactile feel for them. But also, I don't know what the durability of it is, so I can't sit here and be like, I recommend this for children who want to be aggressive with their controllers, because I don't know if it'll last. But yeah, I really do not recommend this. It's super cute, but the silver D-pad is like such a symbolic thing. It's like, oh, you're almost there, but ooh, this is just so glaringly bad. And I think that's a pretty good summation of it. It's just not good. And the 8BitDo one, I think, is amazing. I think this is $35. It's super worth $35. It feels great. The rumble feels good. It feels great in my hands. To be honest, the fact that also it is slightly bigger is a huge advantage because it's just smaller enough to be comfortable in hands like mine, as opposed to being like, oh, wait, is this aimed at kids? I think a kid could play with it comfortably, but not a toddler necessarily. The only, shortcoming here is the wire, but the wire that it comes with, the cable it comes with, is really, really long. And if you are playing, for example, at your computer like I am, I realized I literally don't care, especially because when I do play PC games, I always tend to have a dead controller, so it ends up being plugged in to charge the entire time anyway. So for me, that's not a deal breaker. I am curious to see if 8BitDo might make more of these, sort of in two different camps. Like if they make more things in this kind of material and colorway, that would be really cool. But also if they make things in this size, either ones that are kind of like they're all-purpose ones, which are not licensed by anyone, or if they do any sort of other partnership. I don't know. I don't think they do partnerships with Nintendo. I'm not sure if that will change in the future, but it would honestly be cool to see a Switch controller with this size and layout as well. But I'm not holding my breath because, again, the Pro controller is great. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. I hope you found both of these cute. And I don't know, I feel like either one of these would also make a great like Easter gift. Do people give Easter gifts? I don't know. It's like, it's a very, there's a lot going on with that holiday. But I also, ever since seeing that was called the spring colorway, I feel a bit self-conscious now that my favorite colors are like Easter colors. But it's very specific to like the bunny and stuff and not the religious aspect. Anyway, a huge thank you to my Ko-fi supporters. If you don't know, I have a Ko-fi and I post monthly game reviews and other exclusive content like blog posts on little projects I do that aren't necessarily big video worthy. And I also have a Discord and we play games, we talk, we show stuff off. It's a really sweet, wholesome community. So those links are all in the description below. Feel free to let me know your favorite controllers in the comments. Are you someone who likes them bigger, smaller? You literally don't care. You are specifically the person whose hands they've molded in order to develop controllers based on. Please explain the N64 controller if that is you. And do not forget that you are always welcome at Cool Uncle's house. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.